Hello everyone, this video is going to be over Hispanisms in Cebuano. I decided to do this after hearing so many Spanish loanwords when I was on my trip in Davao, and not realizing that I could have made a video explaining about this. So here it is. This is going to be a long series of videos because there's a lot I do want to talk about. For this introduction is talking about just the thousands and thousands of loanwords and borrowed words that existed in that came from Spanish into Cebuano, and this was a result of more than 300 years of Spanish colonization, right? So you obviously there's going to be so much heavily influence of borrowing from the language after over 3 centuries of just Spanish colonization. And it really did influence the language a lot, right? Some even say that there's just way more Spanish loanwords in Cebuano compared to other Philippine languages. And that I don't really know, but it kind of seems like that. I think one video said on YouTube that there's like about 5,000 in Tagalog, whereas like there's like 7,000 more in Cebuano. So I don't know, but people do say that there's so many Spanish loanwords in Cebuano, and I think Cebuano, as they say, they think that Cebuano is the language that most has a lot of Spanish loanwords, a Philippine language that's an Austronesian that has the most in the Philippines, right? This isn't including Chavacano, because Chavacano is not an Austronesian language, it's a Spanish Creole, so that's it's a different language. Now, what's their importance, right? Why is this important? Well, it's important because it helped shape the Cebuano language of today, right? There are certain expressions and things that were borrowed into Cebuano from Spanish that Cebuano could not express. So Cebuano took those means of expression and those ways that we can express new things and new ideas from Spanish. It borrowed it, right? So there were even the technology that Spanish speakers were using were more advanced, and they named things in the Spanish language that Cebuano used and borrowed, right? So it's kind of like the evolution of this language. Cebuano was emerging into this language that was getting into the future via Spanish, right? It was piggybacking off of it. So it borrowed and borrowed things that couldn't be explained well in Cebuano that Spanish could explain. So why should we care about this? Well, for once, it made the Cebuano language, the modern Cebuano language of today what it is, right? Without these Spanish loan words, we can't really call it Cebuano, right? We can't even use the word Cebuano, right? Because if you're gonna pick out all of the borrowed words, right, you're losing a sense of identity here. Like we start losing different things, right? When we start picking out things of our identity, we start losing that identity when we start kicking it out and when we don't accept it, right? So this is one of the reasons why modern Cebuano language, like we need to accept these Spanish loan words. We can't just leave them out and start using indigenous or indigenous words, or even creating and making up indigenous words for these concepts, right? Otherwise, we can't really call ourselves like real Cebuano speakers in that manner. What else can I talk about this one? Also, some people like to make dramas, and they like to make dramas and shows and TV series and plays about the in the Cebuano language during the time, let's say like the time era before the Spanish colonization came, or before Spanish colonization came, and and the language back then was different, right? There weren't any Spanish loan words, so they had to use the indigenous loan words for speaking in Cebuano, right? Because obviously it wouldn't make sense to say kumusta, right? When Spanish colonization didn't start back in the day. Whereas after Spanish colonization started, then that's the time they can start using these cognates, right? So think about it. If you're gonna create a play or write a story, or have actors act out a story that took place before Magellan came to the islands, before the Spaniards arrived, you wouldn't be using the Hispanic or the Spanish loan words or the borrowed words. You would be using the indigenous words, right? But after the time that colonization started, then that's the time you can start using the Spanish loan words, because that was a time when heavy borrowing and influence started. So and we should care, because we want to be accurate with our history, right? You wouldn't want to put modern Cebuano and old Cebuano together, so that's why we should care. And we should also care because for those of you who do start washing away certain aspects of your culture and picking out certain things you don't like about it, you start losing that sense of identity. You're no longer called a Cebuano, or I guess a part of the Cebuanos ethno-linguistic speaking group, So that's just my little introduction for the Cebuano language, right? Well, or Hispanisms in the Cebuano language. So here we'll start with some words, and then I'm going to add in more videos to this, right? So this first word we have is tubero. Tubero. And these series of videos are just going to be vocabulary and me explaining some of these borrowed loan words that can help you express yourself. So tubero comes from this word here, the Spanish loan word tubo, which all of these words are in Cebuano, so you can use them in Cebuano to help you communicate, right? So tubo in Cebuano came from Spanish as well, which means a tube, right? A tube. A tubero, someone who does like tube work, right? A tubero, because remember we have that ero ending, so someone who does the tubes is a plumber. So we have a plumber, tubero, okay? Think of it as in the Super Mario Brothers, right? Mario Brothers, they're plumbers, tubero, right? A tube. So someone who does tubes would be a tubero, which is called a plumber. The next word we have is retuki, right? Retuki comes from the Spanish borrowed word retocar, right? To retouch, right? And in this case, it got borrowed into the Cebuano as retuki, right? Which was it's a past tense from Spanish. If you conjugate the verb retocar, retoque is the word that got borrowed into Cebuano as retuki. And it means to touch up, refine, or beautify something, whether it's a portrait or a picture or just an event. You can just touch up and refine a picture or something like. It's just those touch-ups, or to refine it, to beautify it, right? Traje de moda and traje de boda. These are modes of clothing, right? They're types of clothing for special occasions. For example, like men's suits, right? Fashion. So, for example, traje de boda is a suit for marriage, or la boda in Spanish is like marriage, okay? Or a casar, right? Casar, to get married, right? Casar, to be married. Boda is like a wedding. So traje de boda is the mode of fashion for weddings, right? Traje de moda as well. Like those are used for clothing for special occasions, right? Because you have different types, like traje de boda, traje de casar, traje de so many different types. Okay. Almendras means it's a type of nut. It means almonds, almendras, right? Because we have different types of nuts in the Cebuano language, right? We have casoy, almendras, mani, which is just your regular peanuts, the Spanish peanuts, right? But yeah, we have different types. And then we also have whatchamacallit, pares, yeah, there it is, pares, which means pear. Okay, so here we have pares, which means pairs, I should say pairs, because singular in Spanish is just par, but Cebuano borrowed the plural form, so pares, right? Pairs, whether it's a pair of cars, a pair of shoes, a pair of something, right? A pair. This is normally used for like card games and stuff. Like if you put down a pair of twos, a pair of jacks, a pair of aces, stuff like that, right? Below that, we have nerviosa. We have the osa ending. Remember, you already know how to make these endings, right? Nerviosa is someone who is a nervous person, but since it's a feminine ending with the a, we take it as a female person who is nervous, right? The masculine form you already know, it's nervioso. The next one is ostia, and this one is like used in the church, like a Catholic church. Hostia is the host for communion, right? Hostia. That's the host for the communion or the communion bread. Um, it's just these again. They're just like random words that I wrote down from people talking and speaking Cebuano that I just found out that they were speaking these borrowed or loan Spanish words. Ascenso is to improve economically. Ascenso. And finally, for this one, we have alcancia, which is a piggy bank or a coin jar, like somewhere where you can store money, right? A piggy bank or a coin jar. So, alcancia is that, or alcancia, in a sense, so to improve economically. So your business is improving economically. You're starting to buy better material for your house. You're starting to clean up your place because you're going to improve on something. You have enough money to get new things now for your house. You're no longer living in a poor society. That kind of action describes what ascenso is, and this sucks with the whole focus. But yeah, this is wrapping up for this first video for Hispanisms in Cebuano language.